it right there. So welcome in, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this educational seminar. A little about me. My name is Selena Pollard. I have been a licensed realtor since 1993. I have actually enjoyed, let me admit one more person here. I've enjoyed serving all segments of the real estate community, from first-time home buyers to folks who are looking to downsize, or as I like to call it, right size, and every type of client scenario in between. Today's focus will be on those who are looking to right size and or downsize, as well as the adult children of those who may need to take on a supportive role here. We began this educational series a few weeks ago, focusing on aspects foundational to 55 plus living. And today my guest is Jaycel Murphy, who is an elite declutter coach. I love the title. Hope you guys do as well. So let me tell you a little bit about Jaycel. Welcome, Jaycel. Thank you for joining, but I'd like to formally introduce you.
Thank you.
So Jaycel is the CEO of Love Cleaning Residential and founder of the Decluttering platform. For many years, she has served hundreds of people around the world of all ages and backgrounds to declutter and find systems of order in their home. Professionally certified as a clutter coach and home organizer, Jaycel specializes in decluttering. She also draws on her expertise of working with vulnerable communities and has an incredible level of empathy, having invested 15 years in the social service sector. She is excited to continue her work, helping people to break free of clutter and limiting beliefs that stop them from maintaining clear and organized environments. Jaycel says, I am most passionate about the powerful role mindset plays in decluttering. So I create directives to walk people through the process of cultivating and maintaining a clutter-free environment. And trust, I've had to overcome it myself, in the words of Jaycel. Also, Jaycel is actually a major contributor to our Rightsizing Remedies Facebook group. And this event, as I mentioned, is part of our series of interviewing professionals that specifically cater to those who are looking at downsizes and or retirement. So today, the focus is decluttering, why and when. And thank you again, Jaycel, for joining. Thank you for sharing your vast knowledge with us. We will jump right in.
Yeah, and thank you for having me here today. It's such an honor, like all of the work that we've ever done together, being even just, the work that we've done together, being able to bring other people in from community, to support us in helping, clients and that sort of thing. It's just such a ripple effect that goes out. So it's wonderful to do this work. So yes, you're right. Today, we're going to be talking about downsizing, decluttering, which is my specialty. So for those of you who don't know too much, I won't take too much time, Selena, because I know that we're on a time crunch here.
And I have questions. I have questions.
Most people think that, I cannot wait to answer these questions. I think there's a misconception, though, around professional organizers. Most people, they look at us and they're like, oh, you've always had it together. They couldn't possibly understand what it's like to go through this work. And so when I say that I've been through it and I've had to overcome myself, no kidding. Like, my mother was the one who was organized. I was the one who was just like all over the place. I mean, my room as a kid, stuff was toys mixed in with food, mixed in with shoes and homework. I mean, I couldn't get anything done. My mother would say, go clean up your room, and I would stand there paralyzed in fear. So from a child, I understood, and well, not understood then, but looking back in hindsight, can understand the impacts of being gentle or more gentle when we're doing this work. So again, thank you so much for having me here.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining in. So first question, preparing the space for, in your experience, why do people put off downsizing?
Yes.
That's a great first question.
It's a great first question. And I think that, in the words of my mentor and maybe some other mentors who have followed, some of our mindset coaches, is that people are, they veer away from anything that's painful, will avoid anything that's painful, and anything that brings us pleasure or we perceive as being pleasurable, we run towards it. That's what we want to do. And although I think folks who are, maybe approaching a certain time in their life where the pace is maybe a little bit more slowed down. They want to spend more time with family, maybe traveling, that sort of thing. That we want to live this life, right? There's this life that we desire where we have the capabilities to do that. But it also means that now we have to look at the life that we've collected, right? And that life is represented in our belongings. Right. And our belongings represent periods of time in our life that might be a little bit difficult to look at and or say thank you to and release as we get older, because of course now we're also looking at, you know, mortality. Let's face it, we're looking at mortality, right? So in decluttering, it's a type of release, which could also be framed as a type of death. And when you pair those two together, I mean, sometimes we have the energy for it, and sometimes we don't have the energy for it, right?
Right.
So that's one of the
it sounds very much like mindset. Like you've got, so then you've got this big piece or these 2 or 3 big pieces that you have to shift. So that.
Yeah, physically and emotionally, right? And then, I mean, add in mobility issues as we get older. I mean, I'm only in my 40s and my knees, my goodness, I have to be in the gym just to keep these things strong, you know? But then also, you know, our step-ups, we have it for years and years, it becomes heavier, it begins to feel heavier. And so that parasympathetic experience that we experience in our bodies, I mean, that can trigger all sorts of things in our mind, memories, that thing. But then on the other side, our clutter also can feel very familiar and give us a sense of comfort. It anchors us to our past, right? So that might be another barrier to downsizing. And it could answer the question as to why people put it off.
Why they put it off. So why should we downsize? I think you kind of touched on it a little bit in your answer there, but let's focus on that. Why should we downsize?
Yeah, I think for everyone it's different, right? There's not a one answer fits all for why we should downsize. I mean, some people just want to live with less, right? They want to live with less. Like I said earlier, they want to be able to travel. They want to get out there with their family. They want to enjoy their grandchildren. For the caregivers of younger people, I mean, or of older or maybe aging out parents or people living with disabilities. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to have more time for ourselves. What about self-care, right? So living with less allows us to enjoy all of those facets, right? To tap into more self-care time, more downtime, more travel, more reading of books, more listening to music, dancing in the kitchen while we're cooking dinner without having to stress out about what needs to be auctioned off and ... right? Or am I doing right for my parent or family member who's already deceased? So we're going to get into that too, as well. But, you know, downsizing also, speaking of family members who have maybe passed on, if we downsize now while we're alive, if we make those decisions now, it's one less thing for our caregivers to have to think of. And in our community, Selena, we call that shifting the burden. So, right. So, I mean, for anybody who has ever had somebody go, you want my clutter? Here, take it. I'm decluttering. You can have it. And we look at them and we're like, I don't need this, but they're so happy. And they've set it aside for us. And so what do we end up doing? We take it because we love them. Yeah. Right? And so it's the same thing, right? So here we want to take some control as we're getting older and be responsible for our things and say, you know, what charities are important to me and who can I think about, you know, coordinating with to donate these items to, so that it's not, the burden is not shifted. The burden is not shifted.
I really, really like that. And it happens very, very often. The client that we were talking about earlier, that was exactly what happened. And it wasn't just, it was grandmother to daughter, and then daughter passes, husband's left with grandmother and daughter stuff. And then my client ended up being the daughter of the father who is now in the long-term care. And so, on all of that stuff came, so the shifting of the burden was thrice, I guess, right? So, so I resonate with that. I resonate with that. Tell me, Jaycel, what factors need to be considered for the downsizing process?
Well, number one, you should know where you're going. You know, if you're downsizing is different from decluttering. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that later, but if you're downsizing, you want to know, well, what am I downsizing to? Am I downsizing to an assisted living? Am I downsizing to an in-law suite? Am I downsizing to a condo in the Dominican Republic? Like, where am I going? No, take me there, please.
Right.
But like, where am I going? And once I know, where I'm going, then I can start looking at things like the cost associated with the move. And I think people underestimate the cost associated with the move. If you're traveling, if you're moving overseas, there are professional services, shipping services that you need to invest, right? And then thinking about how much do you want to spend on those services will kind of be a really nice benchmark or framework or boundary for what you decide to keep. So know where you're going. And I think another factor to be considered is when we're letting go, I'm going to use this one, when we're letting go of our items, oftentimes we overestimate their value. So we think that chest of drawers that was, built in 19 or late 18 is worth X amount of dollars. But what is the value of that particular item on the market today? That can hold people back from letting go of their items if they think that other people are undervaluing.
Right. So it sounds like there needs to be then a component. I think going through this process, downsizing, decluttering, and things like that, I think it's really good if you have like a person that you can really depend on, that can sort of steer you in the right direction and be that voice of reason as well. I think oftentimes I find that the people who have the hardest time are people who are trying to do it alone.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I mean, well, think about it like this. It's like with anything that we're learning to do, we need a teacher to teach us, especially if we're learning something for the first time, or if we've been doing something our own way for X amount of years, we're getting the same results. Don't keep knocking your head up against that wall. Do something differently. And that might mean enlisting somebody who has the skill set that you can tap into. Use my grace. God gave it to me for a reason. Tap into it. It's here for you. And so I think that once we get over the shame and we get over the embarrassment of it all, and I want to tell you, there's nothing to be, I know it feels like there might be something to be ashamed of, but understand that that's conditioning. You weren't born with any of those narratives that it's, you have to hold on to this thing because it might be worth something someday. You were taught that narrative. And so you carried that through with you throughout your life. And so when you work with somebody like myself, you can help to reframe some of those beliefs and get a different result.
And I want to just pause and say a couple of things. You just said you were taught that narrative. One of the things when I took my SRES course, my senior real estate representative course, the one thing they talked about is the things that you may run into, people who have been through the war. They tend to really hold on to things because there was such scarcity, or people who have come from another country. So there are as you said, these things that they are taught in their sort of, it's almost in their DNA, right? To hold on that these things are valuable. Sorry, the other thing I wanted to pivot and say, it's a housekeeping matter. If anyone has any questions at all while we are moving through, feel free to throw it in the chat and we will absolutely have Jaycel answer. So I just wanted to say that because we might forget towards the end. So just throw it in the chat and we'll make sure that we get it answered. Sorry, I needed to do that housekeeping.
Bring them on.
Yeah, and we love questions. Please, we love questions.
But, if I can just speak to this, listen, time and context matters. It really does, right? Like we might think it was just, the Depression age where people had a scarcity mindset. That mindset is still prevalent today, right? We see it in, developing countries or developed or underdeveloped, however you want to phrase it, other places around the world who maybe aren't as rich as have a rich economy as we do here in the Northwest. Right. So just look at it from perspective. And then, I mean, you've got individuals who have passed down these narratives from generation to generation. That's something too. And even if, your financial situation has come out of poverty, you might still be walking around with that mindset. Right. So your bank may show one thing, but then your actions are showing something else. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen homes where the wealth is there, but now it's like item rich. We talk about house, but you've got a lot of in this case, they've got a lot of stuff, their money tied up in these items that they purchased to maybe sometimes even just keep up with the Joneses, right? Using.
So I feel like what we're saying here is that it's just so common, like it's an extremely common thing, and it's something, again, the shame needs to be pulled away from it, right? The curtain needs to be drawn back, and everybody just needs to just know that they're not alone, and it's not just them. Yes, so we're talking about the downside. Let's focus on the decluttering. This is like a loaded question. I know it's a crazy question. How long does the process to declutter generally take? So, right. Okay, go.
Just decluttering, not downsizing.
No, let's just talk about decluttering. Let's even, because I feel like it's something that should probably be engaged in before you even think about making a move. So let's talk about how that looks and how long a process that could possibly take. And maybe, if you can break down in bite-sized pieces, how somebody would start the process, which is my next question, but we'll just bundle it all in and talk about that for a few minutes.
Okay, absolutely. Well, let me just draw a distinction between decluttering and downsizing, because I wonder if that might even be a question in people's minds. Maybe some people didn't even know that there was a difference between the two, and they thought the word was, I don't know what the word is, but the word was, relatable to both, or meant the same for both. So with decluttering, right, you're looking at the function of your space, right? You're looking at all of the access inside of the home, and you're saying, okay, you know what? How can I get this home to a space where I'm living with less, but my ability to move through this space is increased, right? So it's not downsizing, because downsizing, what you're doing in downsizing is you're moving from a larger space into a smaller space, right? So it's a little bit more permanent. Whereas if you're decluttering, yes, you might be scaling down, but you also still have room to scale back up if you so choose, right? You may in a different way, so you may purchase other things, fill that space differently. But decluttering is really releasing all of what no longer serves you, right?
Decluttering, can we stop? Decluttering is releasing what no longer serves you.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. That can just mean a million things. Moving on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's why decluttering, you can declutter in every area of life. So when you're looking at decluttering, you want to give yourself anywhere, and these guys, like, realistically, 3 to 6 months. That's a realistic timeline for decluttering your space if you live with, say, an average amount of clutter, right? What is an average amount of clutter? Some people are like, well, I don't know what that looks like because I don't go snooping in people's drawers to know, or opening up doors they tell me not to, right? And so an average amount of clutter, let's just say you have a table, right? There may be a pile over here, a pile over there, but by the end of the week or by the end of the month, you can pretty much get it together. Your clutter isn't necessarily screaming at you. It's not rude to you. It's not like, hook me up right now, I know you see me sitting here. It's palatable, and that's on the lower end. So that's maybe like 3 months. You have your job, you have maybe children, you have whatever responsibilities. Maybe you're really kind of trying to transition your job over to someone else. So maybe you're doing some training, and a lot of your time is being taken up there. Slow and steady wins the race here. So maybe about half an hour each day or every other day. Think of it like fitness, right? You're not going to work out every single day. Your body needs to recover. Your muscles need to recover. And it's the same thing with decluttering. Your brain needs to recover. It can feel very even. So I would say start off with about 15 minutes to half an hour every day, and do that every week for about 3 days a week. And that should take you to about the 3-month point. Now,
I like that.
If you have a little bit more, right? And this is for people who are working alone. So maybe your clutter is rude to you.
It's rude. Okay. We're on the other side of it. Okay. Rude. Yeah. We're rude. Okay.
Rude. And it's everywhere. And maybe you feel a little bit embarrassed to have people over, right? You might need more than just a day or an afternoon to whip your place together in order to entertain company. In that scenario, you're looking at closer to the 6-month or more to take care
And
of
would
this.
you say the same 3 days a week, half an hour a day thing would you say that?
I would give it a little bit more time. I would say do about in 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
And I would cut it down to maybe 2 days a week.
Okay. Oh,
Mm.
okay.
Yeah.
So in that instance, you would cut it down.
Yeah. So you're doing more, but you
Right.
have your breaks, and
Right.
but you're not just sitting down resting during those breaks, right? During those breaks, you may spend 5 minutes doing a tiny little declutter, right? But you're not really getting into the nitty gritty, right? You're not getting
Right.
into larger projects or
Right.
the larger bins or the larger corners.
Right. Right.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. So, here's the final question, and then I've noticed we've got some comments in our Facebook Live, so I'm going to go over there after I ask you this last question. Where is the easiest space to start? And maybe you can give us 2 or 3 takeaways, Jaycel.
Easiest place to start. It's so funny. And I've mentioned this before. I firmly believe, and I was taught this by my Indigenous elders, and I've heard it recycled so many times, the same message. When we heal, if we heal ourselves first, everything around us begins to heal, right? But we start with ourselves. So when you ask me, where would I recommend you start? Start in your space, right? Start with your bedside table, right? Cleaning out your bedside table. What do you need to live with in your bedside table? Then maybe you go to your pajamas, and then to your shirts, right? Like just go piece by piece, but start off in your space first, and then slowly gravitate outwards from there. So it might be another space that you use most frequently, could be, say, the kitchen, right? So go into the kitchen if you find, because you're familiar with that space. You know what you use, you know what you can live without. It's easy stuff.
Yes.
Do not start with the sentimental stuff. Don't start with the stuff in storage, and stay away from paper until you gain some confidence in your abilities.
Stay away from paper. That brings me to a question I saw in the chat, but I want to just go through the chat on Facebook. Okay. My kids keep taking me to get rid of, so they don't have to deal. Okay, that's funny. Okay, people need your contact info. I'm definitely going to obviously put that in the chat. How can someone help you declutter if they don't understand the sentimental value you have on an item? And how do you know what should be kept and not kept?
Okay. Well, they won't know until you communicate the sentimental value, right? And at the end of the day, we don't have any control over the other person. How they listen to you is completely up to them. You can tell them that you just need them to hear the story, and then that's it. You can move on from there. But helping them, it's just a matter of telling them what your needs are. I need you to hear me. I need you to hear that this particular item is important to me, and tell them why it's important. If there's a story behind it, share that story with them, because it's going to help them to understand, and it's going to, in some ways, use this sparingly, but it's going to help them to not badger you about that particular thing, right? Everything can't be important to you though, right? Like the whole can't be important to you, right? But if you have those pieces, then communicate that with them. Sorry, Selena, what was the other part of the question?
I think, give me 1 second. Understand. How do you know what should be kept and not kept? I think that's a loaded question.
It's such a loaded question, right? Because who am I to tell you what you should and should not keep? Right. There will be a time where you're going to feel comfortable letting go of some of your more sentimental items. But let's just say you have a large collection of tchotchkes from your grandmother or from whomever. You can pick a few of those tchotchkes that represent the entire collection, so that you don't have to keep the entire collection, right? And you can do this with anything that you have inside of your home. Maybe you thought, I remember when my partner passed away in 2016, right? 6.5 weeks cancer, he was gone. And so looking at all of these items, and, I had all of these things that were given to me, and they were his. And it's like, my God, I felt badly getting, letting
rid of anything.
Yeah. Like even his underwear, I didn't want to get rid of anything, because I was like, oh my God, it is, right? And I use the same technique for myself, so I know that it works. choose some things that are really important to you, and then everything else can go, because you have that one thing that's, or those two things that are sentimental, that hold that story, that hold that memory of that person. Is the person in the item? No, but the memory of them is. On the flip side, I do remember inheriting my grandmother's Godfather movie collection, because she loved the Godfather. So cute. She also loved the Waltons, but
Right.
she loved
Who didn't love the Waltons?
the Waltons. So, I remember having this collection, but I didn't have a VHS player to play it on.
Right.
So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, if I don't have a VHS player, how else can I experience this?
Right.
Well, there's Amazon and Netflix and all sorts of other streaming platforms that have that same movie. I ended up letting go of the collection, and I still know that I can go and I can access those movies, and even just the memory in my own mind and heart whenever I want to.
Sure.
So we all get to that point in our own time and space, but hearing somebody else having gone through that and successfully gone through it, hopefully that my story, even just that in and of itself, will inspire you to either let go of some items that are difficult to let go of, find other ways to encapsulate them. And if you do choose one or two pieces, have them in like your housing rotation. So, maybe your decor, accessories, put them up in a vignette, allow them to be, the star of that story, so that you get to see them regularly. They're not in a box somewhere.
I like that. I like that. We have an interesting question from Jane. But how do we manage, you actually mentioned the paper earlier, but how do we manage our paper clutter? I cannot part with my children's schoolwork, art, treasures, etc. Take my furniture, but not that adorable painting.
We all have boundaries. We have boundaries. There are some things that we are never going to let go of, right? Because they are that meaningful to us. And somebody coming and telling us to take a picture of it and then let go of everything else, and you can digitize it. Sure, you can. You can digitize it. 100%.
Well, you can digitize it. Yeah.
Yeah, you could. That's an option. But if you more like the tactile, the feel, you like to see the macaroni that is fallen off in places, then go ahead and keep it. Maybe you want to think about storage solutions for keeping those pieces, right? So it's not so much a matter of letting them go and releasing them or decluttering them, but now we're looking at how can we create a system inside of this home that preserves the integrity of the pieces that we want to keep, right? That's my recommendation to you. It is more costly to store items properly.
Yeah.
So now we're thinking about how many bins do we need to purchase? What type of bins do we need to purchase? Oftentimes paper storage can be a little bit more expensive. So we want to think about what solutions are best here and then plan accordingly. Get help for something like that though, for sure. Definitely get help.
Carm says, I love this. I keep too many old clothes to wear around the house. How do I change this mindset? I'm going to read the whole message and then we'll break it down. And also, I tend to put all of my not needed right now items in my basement, and I dread going through the basement stuff. And I've been putting that off. Where do I start? I also have many VHS tapes. Who can I give them to?
Oh, okay. Ooh, really good questions. Okay, so the VHS tapes, you can always call around to seniors' homes or assisted living places.
Yes, that's true.
We still have the VHS and the videos. I feel like our seniors, they love that experience of listen, now have a VHS player. I do. And I've been exposed to my children to VHS movies, and they're like, "Oh, rewind? Really? What? How long?
What is that? What does that mean?"
This is a whole weird deal. I even show them that you can watch it in slow motion. They're fascinated by it. I love it, and they actually use it, which is incredible. So find an organization that you think might. Give them a call. Always call first. Yes. If you're donating something, make sure that they have the capacity to take what you have, and it might be one or two places. Question I have for you. When you speak about keeping old stuff, it's so interesting, right? Because the way we do something in one area of our life, we do it in other areas of our life. So when I hear somebody holding on to something that is old, my question to you is, what else are you holding on to that is old and expired?
Right? Ooh, Carmela, we're waiting for the answer.
relationships that are old and expired, right? Just for the sake of holding on to them because you've had them for such a long period of time, right? You've invested your time, you've built up stories,
So it
relationships.
is a mindset thing, because that's what she
Yeah,
asked. She said, how do I change this mindset? So
You,
how does she make that shift?
Mhm. I think the first thing you need to do is recognize that there's the issue which you already have, right? And ask yourself the question, when did I decide this? When did I decide that I was okay with keeping old things? Things that
Mhm.
don't elevate me, things that end up in the basement, right?
Mm.
When did I decide that? And you may come up with, and you may come up with, oh, this is something that we've always done in our family. We've always held on to our old garments, dot, 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 dot. So
Mm.
once you can see where that narrative comes from, where that belief stemmed from, when you decided that, some people may even say, well, I never decided it for myself. It's something I just adopted over time. I don't know. We don't
Right. I just thought that's what you did. I just thought that's what you did.
decide that. Yeah, it's just what people do, right? Yes and no.
Mhm.
There's always an alternative. So we have old things. There's textile museums, or sorry, not museums, but textile recycling programs, right?
Mhm.
So if you're donating items to, say, Value Village, and you're concerned about, well, maybe not Value Village, but any donation center, let me just say that, and you are concerned about donating maybe worn out clothing, you don't really want to put it into the garbage, find out if they have a textile recycling program, because then all you have to do is bag the old clothing that probably isn't good for sale into one bag, mark it, bag all the clothes that are going for donations that they could sell, mark that bag as well, and when you get there, let them know this is for textile recycling and this is for your store. Can I get my QR for my 20% off, please?
Please and thank you.
And I'll take
Yeah.
two for each bag.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are ways. It's a matter of really looking at the belief. We have to face it. We have to look at it, and we have
It's
to
the
ask ourselves,
belief.
when did I decide it? Because if we don't take responsibility for the thought, for the belief, then we can't change it. It's always someone else's problem, and that will consistently live outside of you. It will continue to live outside of you until you adopt it as a belief that you initiated. Then that means you get to change it.
So you really need to dig down to where the belief has come from and flourish from there. One of the things that I keep in the back of my head, thankfully I move a lot, and in moving a lot, you end up like getting rid of stuff. But I always think, like, I could bless so many people with this stuff. That's what is always at the front of my mind. I can bless so many people with these pants that no longer fit me. Do you know what I mean? And then we all know this. I think there's mostly ladies on this. We all know this, okay? We do not need all the clothes that we have. We just don't. We probably go through like about this much of a rack of stuff. That's the stuff that we wear week in and week out. I am ashamed to say that I have 2 wardrobes full of stuff, right? Because like, well, what if this and what if this? But the reality is we don't need it all. We don't need it all. And if somebody else can be blessed by it, I mean, that's my motivating factor too. If I can bless someone else with the stuff that I know that I'm not using, I feel like that's worth it.
100%. And it absolutely is. I think we only use like 20% of the clothing.
Oof.
Yeah,
Even that, yeah, that's like, oof.
yeah.
Well, everybody's saying, well, Sim loved your comment about framing your favorites. That really resonated with me as well. I think that's a great way to sort of have your stuff and keep your stuff.
Yeah, and keep it. Yeah, right. Definitely. And celebrate it.
Yeah, exactly. Geez, we've gone a little bit over, but I think it's okay. Any more questions? Any more questions from the peanut gallery? We want to answer them as much as we can. I'm going to jump back over into the Facebook group and see if there's just a lot of love. They're giving you a lot of love here, my dear. And I will be posting, sorry?
I said, I love you. I love you too. I love them too.
And I'm going to be posting her information in the chat. I'm going to be posting it in this chat. Actually, you know what? Do you want to hop in the chat, Jaycel, and put your
Yeah.
information in there?
Yeah. And I also just wanted to say, once you've going back to, kind of this process of, when did I decide that this is something that, I believe or I'm okay with, right? Then you kind of want to look at your lifestyle now and ask yourself, does that belief still fit into where I am now and whom I'm becoming? Because going back to time and context matters. The beliefs that we adopted when we were younger suited us then because they came likely from people who were, responsible for us. They were our community. We wanted to fit in. Then we got older, we had friends, we wanted to fit into those communities too. So now you're at a different phase in your life. Ask yourself, how does that belief support me today? And if it doesn't, if keeping old stuff does not support you anymore, and now you know why you can make that change, right? Yeah.
That's the piece. Well, Carmela says that she loves this discussion and maybe this will help her finally start decluttering. She's been dreading it.
Oh my goodness, Carmela, you need to join us over on Instagram. We've got this 25 days of decluttering going on.
Oh, yes, Carmela. Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah, why don't you talk about that? Jaycel, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, well, we just did, kind of like all of the basics. So like we looked at our vision for our home. We looked at, emotional clutter. Maybe there's somebody we need to forgive. I have to turn around and remember we did a brain dump, right? So when you've got like mental clutter going on, you can't really wrap your mind around your thoughts. Doing a brain dump, I've given you guys the instructions for that. There are some PDFs and downloads for decluttering, having those difficult conversations. And we'll be going till the middle of May. So every day I'll be on, except for Sundays, because that's my rest day. And I'll be just dropping, a minute, 30 seconds of information, useful information that will help you as you move through your decluttering journey. And this week, we're starting on those me spaces, like the bedside table, our purse, the car, right? Spaces that we occupy most often. And then we'll get into the rest of the house the following week.
Woohoo! So drop your Instagram handle in the chat. Drop your and any other information that people need to get in touch with you. Deborah, thank you for joining us. Deborah says, I have a ton of work clothes, but now work from home. Time to purge. There's a place, Deborah, called Dress for Success. Great place to donate work clothes. Dress for Success. So if anybody here is retired or anything like that, this would be a phenomenal place to help ladies get out there who are less fortunate, who don't have the clothes for interviews and things like this. Perfect to donate to.
Perfect. I love it. And you know what? I actually used to work with Dress for Success many moons ago. It's one of the very first places that I started volunteering with. Yeah. I love volunteering with them.
Okay.
Great. So I just put the link to my Instagram.
I saw that. I'm just putting it on Facebook now too.
Awesome. So it's there in the chat, and I'll just let you guys know that the link in my bio on Instagram is pretty much where you can find a consultation booking with me. If you need additional resources, they're there for you. We also have a community over on Telegram. It's our Dear Clutter community over there. So feel free to join us. We'll be posting some stuff from the bingo or the 25 days of decluttering challenge over there as well.
Right. Is the bingo and the decluttering challenge the same thing?
It's the same thing. My goodness.
Okay.
I didn't know what to call it. I was like,
All right. I like the bingo. I like the name. Okay. Let me just do one last quick check over to Facebook. This has been a really fantastic event. This is actually the most viewers that we've had for any of our discussions. So wow. I think Tuesday at 7 is great. I think the topic is fantastic. I think because everybody knows somebody. Thank you everybody for joining us. So we hope this information that we have provided during this session has been really helpful for you. And I'm gonna put the taping is going to be available on my YouTube channel, and it's going to be on Facebook. So please share it. Rewatch it. I know some people joined late, so that's a great place that you can rewatch it right from the beginning. One more thing, a little bit about our small but mighty group. I love to call it called Rightsizing Remedies. It's on Facebook. And Jaycel is one of our contributors. We have a number of high-level professionals who are dedicated to supporting those 55 plus who are facing different scenarios that come with retiring and right-sizing, anywhere from finances to lawyers to all facets. And we have a therapist on there who is a transitional therapist. She's amazing as well. And we have a retirement coach. We also had interviewed her a couple of weeks ago. So if you haven't already done so, please join our small but mighty Facebook group, Rightsizing Remedies. Jaycel, thank you very much for this wonderful and invaluable nuggets. I know that everybody took something away. And as always, Jaycel and myself are always available to have personal discussions with you. Her contact details are here. And you can, of course, reach out personally. I'm getting a lot of, I just want to read from everybody. Thank you from Carmela. Thank you from Melissa. Thank you for joining us. Thank you from iPad. Great session from Natalie. Thank you. And that was you. So happy to have you all here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody on Zoom, everybody on Facebook, we really, really appreciate your time. We love you all. We are totally here for everybody who needs anything in this space. And Selena signing off. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jaycel. Amazing, amazing chat. You are invaluable to our community.
You are invaluable to our community. I'm so lucky to have met you. Wow. Just so fortunate. Such a blessing.
I'm so fortunate to have met you as well. You know what? We know it was God made.
We know it was God's. It was so God's timing.
Woo. We did.
Cool.
Well, thank you, guys. Have a lovely Tuesday evening. Thank you, Jaycel. Take good care, everybody. Bye for now.